and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host, Ed, and on today's show, we're talking all about the latest developments in the Ligue 1 broadcast rights and what it means for international fans. We're also going to be talking about Xavi Simons and what options PSG may have regarding that player. And then we also have some questions from listeners to get to as well. Before we get started, let me thank all of you who have subscribed to PSG Talk Extra Time on Substack. We really appreciate your support. That's going to be the best place to go to read columns from myself, hear experts, Jonathan Johnson from CBS Sports and Robin Berner from Football Transfers. So go over there, subscribe. I think you'll like what you find there. All right, let's get into the show and welcome in my guests. It's been a while since we've had him on, but it's always a pleasure. Marc Damon, welcome back. I have to ask you, are you enjoying the New York Giants Hard Knock show? Getting excited for next season?
Actually, yeah. It's pretty. I actually kind of like the inside scoop of that stuff. Like, it really is kind of fun to watch. So yeah, I always get excited before the Giants season, and then inevitably, as of recently, get let down. But the part where it starts is really exciting.
Absolutely, and I haven't gotten. Hope. You always have hope. I think there's only 2 or 3 episodes. I've been watching Receivers on Netflix, so I'm going to switch over once I'm done with that and check out the Giants. So getting ready for football season. And I guess we're going to be concentrating on football because we don't know if we're going to have PSG to watch. So we're going to talk all about what's going on with these crazy broadcast rights. And Marc, if you don't mind, I'll be a little long-winded here. I've got to set up everything that's going on, and then I'll toss it to you. So let's just start with the deal that was struck today. We are recording on Sunday, July 14th, actually right when the Euros are kicking off. So if Fabian Ruiz scores an incredible goal, Marc might just scream. So keep that in mind. But anyway, let's start with the deal today. So after months and months of waiting, there is finally an agreement in place regarding the Ligue 1 broadcast rights in France. So the LFP board of directors, they've agreed to a rights deal of €500 million per season from, I think it's DAZN, DAZN, and beIN Sports. DAZN, they have rights to 8 matches. beIN Sports will have the first pick for half of the weeks and second selection the rest. The price domestically is also going to be around 30 to 40 euro per month. So if you're in France and you want to watch these games, that's a pretty steep price to pay, depending on which subscription that you sign up for, the length of time. And up until this point, there was real concern for Ligue 1 teams that if a deal didn't get done soon, because they need that money, they depend on that money to keep them, financially viable. So it's great that the deal was finally done. But as Ethan, who we've had on the show before from PSG Fan Club Boise, pointed out on X, he said that the €500 million is nothing compared to the Bundesliga, Serie A. Those domestic deals were worth 1.1 billion and 950 million per year. So essentially, Marc, the LFP dragged this out since last fall, I feel like it was, and they didn't really accept a larger amount. They accepted the 500 million that was offered in the fall. They accepted it now. So nothing really changed. They just dragged it out and put a lot of financial strain on these clubs. So I'm going to stop talking. What do you make of this whole situation?
I think we can safely say that Ligue 1 is probably the poorest run of, if you want to say, the top 5 leagues in European football at this point. I think I think they've been for a while. I think the major issue is that, well, actually, there's a few sort of issues that sort of show up, I think. France is not a football nation in the same way that England is a football nation, or Spain is a football nation, or Germany is a football nation. In the sense that it's not as widely popular, and I think that's sort of historically borne out. I think there's, obviously you have a rabid fan bases for all of the teams, the ultras that travel with the teams, but as sort of a cultural, we talk about cultural footprint, and in the United States, you have sports, that have large cultural footprints, like, the NFL or, the NBA to a degree. Then you have a lot more that are sort of fairly regional deals where it depends sort of city to city if it's popular or not. Like, I live in a part of the country where all the sports are popular. You have hardcore basketball fans. People watch hockey, people watch, soccer, people watch the NFL, they watch Major League Baseball, the Yankees and the Mets. So the issue of sort of getting money to broadcast sports is not really an issue in this country, and because there's always sort of an audience for it. Like, I think the lower broadcast rights fees are probably like the NHL and right now the MLS, but the MLS is still a niche product. Niche being, again, not mainstream. Like, it's not going to attract, the sort of
Yeah.
ratings that a sport like football, like American football, will.
I
And
think Apple and MLS, I just looked it up. It's about $250 million a season.
yeah,
And I think the whole deal is worth 2.5
yeah.
billion.
And in total, basketball has $11 billion worth. They just signed a deal for $11 billion worth of rights fees, and the NFL is even higher than that. It's insane the amount of money that these leagues can get for sports rights and content. And in the United States, you see with all the major leagues of, when we talk about European football in the United States, where you can watch it, most of it has now gone non-linear. In other words, most of it has gone to streaming. So what you'll get is if the Premier League has 10 matches a weekend, you know, 3 or 4 of them will be on linear TV, and then the rest you'll have to buy Peacock to get. The Bundesliga is the same way. You've got to buy ESPN Plus, and maybe they'll put a game on at some point, like a big match. Same with like the Spanish league. So a lot of it is, you talk about the future of where these sports are going. A lot of it is non-linear in the streaming realm. I would say for France specifically, it's important to at least, because the league is still not, I think, ubiquitous or ubiquitously popular in France, you still do want that linear presence. And I think beIN sort of, if you give they have a channel, so it's not like a subscription service. You would buy, if you buy, and obviously if I'm wrong, somebody will correct me after this is over, but like, in the United, like the way we watched beIN Sports in the United States, you have to, have it on your cable system, and you have to have the package that it comes with. So the sports package, it bundles like 10 to 20 sports channels. Most of them you don't watch, but the 2 or 3 of them that you buy it for, you want to watch the PSG, you needed that package to access that channel. It's not basic
Yeah.
cable. So
And
I'm
the
assuming
biggest provider, Comcast, didn't even offer. There was, if you get your TV through Comcast, you couldn't get beIN. There was no way to get it. They
yeah.
just you had to go with like Fubo, I think was one. I think Verizon, if you got your TV through there,
Yeah. I got it through Verizon.
yeah,
I had it both through Verizon and through Sling. So I bought a Sling TV account just so that I could access the beIN Sports channel, just in case I ever lost it off Verizon, which actually happened 6-7 years ago. I think 2018. There was a risk of the channel going away on
yeah,
Verizon, so I had to buy the Sling so I could do my job and watch the team. Um, but in France, it's like, we'll get to the subscription thing because I think that's the important part of this. It was important that they at least keep one of those games, and it's probably the most important one. I'm assuming it's the Sunday evening game.
yeah. For beIN Sports would probably they get the
They would
first
get so
pick.
they get the
Yeah,
game of
the
the week,
PSG.
quote unquote. Last year a lot of it was Marseille. I think what you'll see now is you'll see probably more PSG on the Sunday evening game, because you want at least your most marketable team showcased the most, which actually it sort of may work the other way on that when you think about it, because they got to get people to pay 40-30 euros to, I don't know what the exchange rate is. I think it's euros are a little more. I don't know. When I went over there, euros were more than dollars. If you want to check the exchange rate of what that is in
Yeah,
American.
if it's 40 euro, that's about $43 US dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, not much of a difference, but still that's a lot of money to watch Montpellier versus, Toulouse. Like, that's a lot of money. If you're not a real, like, enthusiast for Ligue 1 soccer, you're going to pay $40 to watch how many matches a week or a month? Like, you're probably, again, I think there will be a market, for soccer fans. I think it'll, and I think with Ligue 1, and we'll talk about this a little bit, I think the international market is almost more important to Ligue 1 than its domestic market. And I'll explain why in some detail, but we'll talk about that when we talk about the domestic rights. But in the international rights. But I just don't know how successful this is going to be subscription wise. I mean, they're getting the money, it's in the pocket. I'm assuming they're going to do some kind of revenue share with DAZN. DAZN gets a certain amount of it and Ligue 1 will get a certain amount of it. Maybe 50-50. I don't know how they'll do it, but how many people are you going to get to spend $40 to, €40 to watch? I'm not going to say substandard football, but not always the best product. Ligue 1 is, I've watched a lot of it over the, last 10 something years. It's very defensive, meaning, they play a lot of defense. There's a lot of low scoring games, a lot of 0-0 draws, a lot of bad shooting. They don't score a lot of goals. And really, every year there's maybe 4 or 5 really good watchable teams. You'll get PSG, you'll get Monaco, Marseille will be watchable for all of its reasons. Lyon, maybe like Rennes or Nice or Lille on occasion. But the market, I just don't see there being this large market for this product the way it's constructed. And you take out the stars that PSG had, PSG are going to have to, and they're going to have to make some of these guys stars. And I think that's possible. These players will become, Bradley Barcola and, Dembele is pretty, well known. I wouldn't call him a star, but he's well known. Gonzalo Ramos and Vitinha and Warren Zaire-Emery, like a lot of pressure on PSG to build these guys into some, to have some stars so that fans will want to come and pay for this. And it is one of those deals where if I'm a PSG fan in France, I'm paying $40 to watch 4 matches a month. I don't really need to watch the other teams, do I? Like, not everyone is a junkie. Not everyone needs to see everything.
And you forget how many of those fans who are junkies, they want to get together with a group and maybe watch on one TV or go to a bar, something like that. So they're not sitting at home by themselves watching. They're going to go out to a bar, and that bar would have paid for the rights, but you can get a bunch of people to watch, and then that's less subscriptions at the end of the day.
Well, and it's also depends on how the your bar, whatever bar you in town, and again, Ligue 1 is very and all of European soccer is still fairly provincial. Every town has a professional, in air quotes, I'm doing air quotes, professional team. And if you're probably, if you're a fan, if you live in Montpellier and you're a fan of football, you're probably going to the match. You're probably not going to sit at home and watch the match. It's not the same. It's not like American sports where you have these ginormous television audiences. It's not the World Cup. It's not the European Championships. It's a different society. So I think it's a roundabout way of saying the standalone Ligue 1 deal. I think if they had tried to do a Ligue 1 network, I think that would have been a complete disaster. I agree with Nasser. I think that I agree with Nasser that would have been a disaster. I think him as sort of the biggest shareholder in the company, which is what he is really. PSG are the largest team. They generate the most revenue. He's the most important owner in the league. He's the largest shareholder in the company. His voice is the one that matters the most financially. And the idea that they were going to try to make some Liga network that people were going to pay $30, $40 a month to watch on its own was insane.
We just saw what happens with that, and if you're in the U.S., you know college football. We just saw that with the Pac-12. They tried to do their own Pac-12 network, and they were completely unprepared on how to produce it, how difficult it is to sell advertising and all of that. And where's the Pac-12 now? There's only 2 teams in it now. All the rest of them have left because the money wasn't the same that these other schools could get elsewhere. So going it alone and trying to start your own network would have been, I agree with you, it would have been catastrophic for Ligue 1. I don't know if it would have went the way of the Pac-12 network here in the U.S., but it would have been bad news. I think there would have been a lot of clubs who lost a lot of money.
And you would have had to have pulled in other sports to it. It couldn't just be watch League on soccer for $40 a month. You'd had to have had other, like, I guess you'd have to get the rights to like handball, or, I know PSG has a handball team and a judo team and
esports.
No, I'm not like seriously. They would have had to have pulled in all of the sort of ancillary club owned sports properties to even make this thing viable. And DAZN already has the infrastructure to distribute it, which is really the most important thing, which is, can you build a network and can you do the distribution rights properly? And can you do the pure infrastructure of, are the games going to skip in and out? Are you going to have technical difficulties? Is the satellite going to go down? Like all of these things that you sort of take for granted when you have a network that knows what it's doing. At least with DAZN, DAZN at least has a history of streaming. In the United States, they do a lot of the boxing. HBO sort of used to do the boxing, and Showtime still does, but HBO sort of, doesn't do it anymore. Haven't done it for years, and DAZN and ESPN sort of took over that. So they do know how to do live television. They do have like announcers and in studio people and basic things like that, and production teams and graphics teams that Ligue 1 would have had to have done completely from scratch. And I think they would have had the idea would have been to go with Warner Brothers Discovery as sort of the delivery system. But I don't think that would have been as successful as what they might be doing now, because Warner Brothers Discovery, I probably assume internationally, isn't really known for European sports.
I think they had some golf. I think they may have had some Olympics in the past. They've kind of dabbled, but I don't think it's a household name in Europe. And again, listeners,
they don't have
I
don't think they have their international portfolio. I don't think it it doesn't have the NBA rights. It doesn't have the American football or baseball. So it's like, I think this was probably the right decision to sort of tread water and to make sure you put money in, because that's what was needed. And I guess we start talking about the international rights, which I do think are actually more important. I think this was sort of important to, obviously it'd be a catastrophe to not be able to show Ligue 1 in France, because that would have just been humiliating. But I think the international rights are actually far more important.
Well, and let me ask you this question. We'll stick with international, or we'll stick with what's going on domestically, and then we'll get to international here in a second. Let me ask you about Super League. If what you're saying, France isn't really the football country as England and Germany, and we're seeing that with the rights deal that they just struck. They could only get after months of negotiating. The $500 million is really the ceiling. And PSG has always stood fast, like, we do not want a Super League. We want things to stay the way it is. But like, if no one else other than PSG is caring about this league and wants them to elevate and is doing all that they can, then why should PSG care? Do you think that mindset, do you think they will ever say, you know what, we've done as much as we can, this league is just not serious, the people running it aren't serious, we're joining the Super League. Do you see that maybe happening in the future?
No.
Okay.
Not while Nasser's not while Nasser's running it. No.
Is that just purely because it's a Real Madrid idea?
No,
I think
it's because Nasser is running PSG. Nasser is very high up in the UEFA hierarchy of club owners. I think he likes the idea of being part of the European Union of Clubs, or whatever they call it. Like, I think there's there's I guess the best term is he's sort of a mark for the sort of history of the whole thing and winning the Champions League and, being a part of that. And, I don't think with Nasser there, I think he's going to make the emotional decision, and also the Super League is really not anywhere close to coming off of the ground. It's just not. And Real Madrid is still dominating European soccer at this point, and they've been threatening to leave for 5 years now, and it doesn't seem to make any difference. It does seem to matter. So, if Real Madrid, unless the dominoes all of a sudden start falling really rapidly, and at that point you'd have no choice but to sort of go Super League, because everyone else is suddenly doing it, so you can't be the last, you can't be the last one. But I don't see that happening. I think they've done enough with the Champions League to sort of keep everyone in line. The English clubs are not going to,
yep.
the English clubs are not going for it. It really does seem to be Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Juventus that really the only ones that sort of kept the name alive. It's always something in the back pocket, but I think it really isn't much more than a name and a marketing leverage thing than even like an actual reality.
I think what would be better, I agree with you. Super League, I think it's just a bad idea. I don't want to be part of it as a PSG supporter. But I do, when I hear news that, what's the Fenway group, the guys the Red Sox and Liverpool, that they are looking at Bordeaux. I think investing in Bordeaux and taking over that club, that's what we need more of. I think Nasser, get on the phone, call your billionaire friends, get a group of guys together and start buying some of these teams. I mean, there was another report that Kylian Mbappe's family might be interested in Khan. There needs to be more investment.
Well,
not the level of PSG, but you know what I mean. Go ahead.
Well, no, they need the level of
not state-owned clubs.
It's fun being but it's fun being dominant. It's fun winning everything. But it's like, there was the rumor that Saudi Arabia was going to buy Monaco and attract Luis Campos over to Monaco, which I don't think that ever really is. That hasn't really come to fruition at the moment. There's always rumors that Saudi Arabia is going to buy everything. So, but you do need the financial investment so that, the clubs are international brands. Like, there is no other real international brand in that league than PSG. They are the brand.
Marseille, maybe, but they are a distant second.
Very distant. I don't see Marseille. I don't see Marseille merch in the United States very often.
Kids are not wearing the Marseille kit here in the U.S. Yeah,
no. Maybe in like Asia or something, but the reach has not gotten to here yet with that.
All right, Mark. Let's switch to the international rights. We talked about it a little bit, but let's dive into it. There's been no real concrete reporting regarding these international rights. Obviously, we're based in the U.S. We had some people comment on X saying, where am I going to watch? I'm in the U.K. And so, yeah, there's a big fan base international, and we're about a month away from the season kicking off. I think it's August 18th. It's the first Ligue 1 match, and we have no idea how in the world we're going to watch these games. We have a guy who goes by Desert PSG. He's on our Discord server, and he's got a contact that's close to what's going on with these negotiations. And he shared something. I'm going to just mention it here. He said that there really isn't a concern at the moment regarding the coverage, and we'll stick with the U.S. So I think the domestic negotiations was really the sticking point, and I think they always knew international is fine, and once they get domestic, then they can go ahead and announce international. So that's kind of what he's saying. There's not a whole lot of worry right there. He goes on to say that he doesn't think that Ligue 1 will go with beIN Sports again. Mostly we saw last season that they sort of moved their operations out of the U.S. A lot of the broadcasters that we knew were let go, unfortunately. And then, I don't know, maybe it was a couple months ago, we heard that Apple may be interested. We mentioned earlier they have the MLS, so we know that they are interested in sports rights. They have Major League Baseball, I think Friday night games, MLS, and so that Apple may be interested in bringing it into Apple TV. So he's thinking that it could either be Apple or DAZN could be the player who comes in and gets the international rights. I also saw some reporting, and you hinted at it, that the LFP, if they did go with a pure Ligue 1 channel and they wanted to broadcast it themselves, that it would have been integrated into Warner Brothers Max streaming platform. So you take those three, Max, Apple, DAZN. Do any of those get you excited? Is there another broadcaster that you think would be a better fit to broadcast PSG and Ligue 1 matches?
Well, I think I've alluded to this before. The issue is that there is a saturation on sort of the main, ESPN Plus and Paramount and Fox, and based off of what I've seen from the Fox coverages, I don't necessarily think that would have been the right. Because actually, very quietly this year, Fox had the Coupe de France rights. Which
you don't want Alexi Lalas talking about French football?
I don't mind Alexi Lalas. I just don't think he's ever watched a French football match in his life. But that's part of this, which is whatever entity buys the international rights, I want them to have a dedicated English language studio show. I know that Ligue 1 does the English language sort of Ligue 1 magazine kind of show where, it's the old school magazine show where they do like interviews and segments and highlights and stuff. And that would air on beIN Sports on occasion. And PSG had something very similar that they would do.
This is Paris, I think it was called.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you'd always watch it and it'd always be like 2 months behind. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What you want is a actual studio show. So you watch the game, you're watching you watch pregame, postgame, halftime with, English language speaking commentators who can make the thing seem important and talk about the teams like they're important and they matter. That's why the Premier League got so over in this country, why the other leagues, get over in this country, because it's treated like a big deal. It's not treated like just some, we got the rights to water polo. We're just going to show.
The Premier League's got Rebecca Lowe. I mean, who's fantastic.
Yeah.
They've got real people who are knowledgeable about the game talking about it.
Yeah, but look what CBS Sports was able to do with the Champions League.
Yes.
And how good that production is and how good that announce team and how good that
Kate Abdo, absolutely.
Abdo, Carragher, it's excellent. It's
Micah Richards, can't leave him
Micah Richards. It's, we talk about in America, the gold standard of studio shows is inside the NBA with Ernie Johnson, Charles Barkley, Kenny the Jet Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal. That's really as close, I think, as we have in this country. I think they've gotten it pretty close in the sense that you could watch those guys and they get I'm using like wrestling terms right now, but they're getting the product over. Like they make you care about what you're watching even more than you do. And they give you insight and they have fun with it.
Yeah.
And it's
not entertaining.
By the end, Ligue 1 on beIN Sports was really depressing because it's like, I don't want to watch Ligue 1 like that, where it's just they're taking the international feed and you get the sort of, generic British announcer that you don't know their name, but they all sound the same. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, and he's just sitting in his basement, kind of like I am right now, and
Yeah, like
just
with a mic,
watching the game.
with a microphone and a headset.
Yeah,
Like maybe have people who are reporting on it, like an actual reporter. The Champions League show brings what's his name, Kasper Schmeichel, or they'll talk to some other guy, covering the Spanish teams. Like, all I want, and it's like at this point, just have anyone do it. I'll pay them. I don't care. Like, I'd rather it be something like HBO Max or Apple. But DAZN, I've registered for DAZN before. I could do it again. It's what it is. I have to pay the money. Fine. But like, just give me a network, give me a streaming service, give me a platform that's going to at least put some effort into it. That's all I
I'm
ask. Just give me some effort.
just
Like,
effort.
broadcast it like you actually can give, people. And there are plenty of British, speaking people. It's not like, it's not like they're going to ask us to do anything, but it's like, we know PSG, we care. There are people that are on our platform that care about it and know about it and are knowledgeable. And there are people in England, there are people in the United States who watch Ligue 1, who have, we've interacted with them with, varying results over the years, but like, there is a community of people that you could get, and there are professional announcers you can sign that would give the product some respect, so that it feels like you're watching something important, not whatever beIN Sports was doing by the end, where it didn't make a difference, nobody cared. So you didn't get it didn't feel important. It didn't feel like something you were, and preferably I'd like them to be on a network where they could get some linear games. Not a lot, but just some. If you could be on HBO Max or something, or Warner Brothers Discovery, you could get a game on TBS or TNT once in a while, in the middle of, a dead period in the year. Maybe an Olympique Marseille PSG game or something like that, where it exposes the product to people that wouldn't normally watch it, so that you can, build fans. Like, I remember back when they were attempting to, build a fan base in the United States. Like, it was a thing at one point, and it sort of, I think, has fizzled out a little bit. Again, 5 years ago, I remember going to, a rooftop in Brooklyn to try to watch the PSG, Coupe de France match against Rennes. And I talked to some of the guys who were running it, and they seemed like they wanted to try to have an imprint. There were like 100, 200 people there or something. It wasn't a big major thing, but like, there is an audience, especially of PSG fans in this country, who want to have a channel, a streaming service, put the effort to treat the matches like they're important, and they're not just a thing that gets buried on a streaming service that you don't know is there. You know what I mean? You can go on any streaming service and you look at all the stuff that's just buried there as content, and it doesn't get publicity, it doesn't get advertising. You just want to give it a chance. And this winter I went to the PSG store on Fifth Avenue, and it's not a very big place. It's really what it's there for, and it's like, it's PSG sort of largest investment in this country, mainly because of the amount of tax and the amount of rent you're paying on a New York Fifth Avenue store. I mean, you might as well that's an insane amount of money. I don't even want to put a number on it. It's just insane amount of money.
I mean, it's
And
$5,000 a month just for a studio apartment. So
yes, no, they're probably looking at 6 figures a month, if maybe more. And essentially that store is not there for the American audience. It's literally there for tourists. It's sort of like a luxury brand store for tourists to go visit.
Same, I think the Vegas one, right? They got one in Vegas, same deal,
Yeah.
right on the strip. So I'm with
Again,
you.
this is some of the most, the Fifth Avenue and the Vegas Strip are some of the most expensive pieces of property in this country. So there is an idea that you're trying to invest somewhat in the United States. So I think it's important that they, that Ligue 1 try to take advantage of the market. That's all I'm saying. I think that, to sort of answer the question, I think HBO Max would probably be the best option from an international perspective, because then you have the tie into TNT and TBS, and they have the soccer infrastructure. They already do the men's and women's national team friendlies. And so I think that would probably be, to me, the best option. I think Apple would be probably number 2, because again, they do the MLS. DAZN would be, it'd be simply to just have the games, because I think they have Women's Champions League games.
I think you're right.
But they don't really have, but they're not producing in-house, is what I'm saying. Like with Apple and with Warner Brothers Discovery, you have the opportunity to maybe produce a little bit in-house, at least do a studio show. I think with DAZN, you're just going to get the games and with the generic commentary, and I don't think it's going to be as good, because DAZN really is I guess for lack of a better term, they're like a content aggregator in the sense that they just buy the rights to stuff and put it on their streaming platform.
They did have Pat McAfee at one point before he left, and then as we know, he's on ESPN. I did see that they DAZN announced a 5-year partnership with Fanatics, which everyone loves. So they're making deals. They're trying to get a foothold. They don't excite me unless they have a big plan and they would unveil it, and then that would get me excited. But I think I'm totally in agreement with you. For me, I'm thinking even bigger than a studio show. I like Apple because, number one, Apple is the richest company in the world, right? If I'm not mistaken. They've got the most money. So anytime you can kind of latch on to a company like that, why not? So if they could get on Apple TV, I think would be incredible. But I think there's a lot of synergy that you could have between Ligue 1 and MLS. We kind of talked about it before. This is not one of the top leagues. It is going to be really hard to get the average person excited about it. You may have to be a little bit adventurous in some of your marketing, maybe. But I think if you're on Apple TV, could you partner with MLS in some way? Could you do summer tours and have PSG play in the All-Star game? Go ahead.
But it's like, and the point I was trying to make about it, the international rights, is as much as we sort of don't like it's sort of a backhanded, when Ligue 1 sort of touts itself as the League of Talents, it's sort of a backhanded compliment in the sense that it's like, hey, come see all the great stars that you're going to watch in all the important leagues get their start here. It's like it does make it seem really super minor league.
But see, and that's the same thing with MLS. Hey, come see these guys. The minute these MLS guys have an opportunity, they're gone to go to Europe. Or a lot of the older European guys, they'll come over and play. We see it with Messi. He comes over.
If that's the hand you're going to play, if that's the hand you have, then it's the hand you have to play. So it's like, that's what I mean by the international, which is like, you're going to get a lot of people outside of France watching the league for the purpose of seeing all the young stars and saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, this kid came to our team in England, or, if Fabrizio Romano goes, Desiree Doué is, interested in playing for Tottenham, you get Tottenham fans to watch the Ligue 1 channel.
I like Apple TV a lot because I think you can do a lot with MLS. They're basically kind of a similar situation where everyone knows it's not a top league. So can you come together and maybe join forces and become bigger than what you are individually? I really like that idea. I know people in France aren't going to like this, but I think Could PSG play a Ligue 1 match over here, play it in MetLife Stadium in New York or something like that? PSG, Marseille? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But if your league can only get 500 million and others are getting $1 billion, there's a problem, and you've got to grow your league if you want more money. The reason you only got 500 million is because the Zone and beIN Sports, they know how much they can charge for advertising, and advertising is based off of eyeballs and subscriptions. And the reason you got that much is because they think there's not a whole lot of room that they could make more off of that investment. So you've got to grow the game. You have to do something different. So I really like Apple TV. Netflix would be interesting. You see a lot with their sports documentaries. Could you go on Netflix? Could they do a Drive to Survive type show with either PSG or the league as a whole? We see them with, we talked about earlier, the documentary receivers. They had quarterbacks. Could you do a show like that in France? You highlight some players, if there's several Americans who are in Ligue 1, maybe profile them and follow them around for a season. Well, I think with Netflix there's a lot that can be done.
Netflix is getting into the live game.
Yep. They have an NFL game, right?
Live stand-up specials. Mm-hmm. It would be their first foray into international soccer, which could happen and would probably, I don't know if the interest is there on Netflix's end. That's the thing. When you have this issue of not being able to grow your brand, and the Ligue 1 brand is not one of the elite ones in the European game. You're fifth place at best. It's very hard in that situation to generate a lot of revenue and a high asking price from these companies, because are you going to pay top dollar for something that is not, this is sort of the problem, is not a top dollar product. And all those years of complaining about the treatment of we talk about officiating, we're watching Francois Letexier officiate a European final, which to me is just bizarre. Because I remember, years ago, he was the 20-something-year-old official that always got overwhelmed in any big match he was ever officiated. So to see him officiating the European final to me is just really stunning. But all those years of that not protecting Neymar and not when complaining about that over and over again, I wasn't doing that because I love Neymar. And he was a PSG player. I wanted to see him protected. But when you intentionally sort of favor the lesser teams and sort of allow a physical grinding style of soccer where you don't call things and you allow guys to get away with more, that's not what people want to watch. And you're seeing, honestly, in the European championships, the sort of low scoring drags that some of these games have been. And it's it's already not a, I mean, we're getting into a much more, philosophical conversation. I think there was a Marcel Bielsa press conference going around where he was talking about this, but it's the product can be a little boring sometimes. And in Ligue 1 especially, the product has been like that for years, where it's just, if you're not watching PSG or, if a team just doesn't decide to open it up, it can be, you're trying to watch Montpellier versus Toulouse. I'm sorry, some of those games are not watchable. So I'm not surprised they're having this problem, because they need to open the game. They need to market their stars. They need to do the basic things that all leagues are supposed to do, and not have these sorts of, socialistic ideas of French parody that everyone sort of is the same. And it's no, not everyone is the same. PSG is better than Kong. Yeah. PSG is better than Toulouse. They're just better. They're better run. They have more money. They have more eyeballs. They have better players. They should be treated differently. Their voice at the table should matter more, because they're generating more money. And once, if French football ever figures that out, and I think this decision they made with the domestic rights, that Nasser was able to sort of guide this thing to a reasonable conclusion, at least gives hope that, the top clubs are going to have the most say, and the top clubs are going to be able to come together and grow the sport. I don't know what else to say. We've been having this discussion for years now, and it doesn't seem to have gotten any better.
I think we're at an inflection point where something does need to change, because this deal was a hot mess. It took forever, and the amount of money that was agreed upon pales in comparison to everyone else. I just want to talk about, just with Netflix, one of the reasons I do like them is you look at what they've been able to do with Formula One. Yeah. Prior to Drive to Survive, no one in the U.S. cared about Formula One. Again, just like now, there's a small community, but now you walk around and everyone knows, Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris and the rest of them. I think most people knew Hamilton, but that's about the extent. And just because of that show and the marketing that they've been able to do, now everyone is following it. You look at the attendance, they now have a race in Las Vegas, and all these people are showing up to watch one guy win a race every time. Like, I wouldn't say that is the most entertaining product that you've ever seen, and they've managed to make it must-see TV, and people are dropping thousands of dollars to go and see Max Verstappen win every race. So if they could do that for Formula One, I have to believe, if Netflix had League On, that they could do something to raise the level of that league.
It's a matter of whether they want it or not.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's a matter of whether they want it or not.
And maybe they would for the right price. They may think, hey, if we can get this low enough, we could blow it up like, Formula One, and we're cashing in, And then outside of that, I think that the third tier would probably be Max. I think that would be good for the reason you said: linear TV opportunities. It's international. So again, we think that this deal is going to get done. We don't know who, but those will be my guesses of who I think would be a good suitor for Ligue 1. So let's put a pin in. Go ahead. Last thoughts on that?
No, what I'm saying is I'm assuming that they're going to have international rights to the United States. So like, this isn't a thing where it's like they're just not going to be on American. I think that would be and that really would be a disaster. But like I think they will have American team. Like, if we're handicapping this, I think they're going to have. It's just a matter of who they can sort of dump it on, and
fingers crossed for Apple TV. I just visually, their production of baseball and MLS, it's so much better than everything else. It's so much crisper. I love that especially with baseball, they bring in percentages.
The only thing with that is they would have to the way it's. I'm assuming DAZN is going to do the broadcasting. Like, I'm assuming, their production team is going to do. Well, somebody's production team going to have to do it. It might even be beIN's production team that does it, and then it gets broadcast on DAZN. But really, the production is going to be out of Apple's control.
I mean, mostly the on-screen graphics. Like, I understand the actual
the on-screen
feed
stuff they can maybe control, but like the camera angles and all that, that's I think out of their control. I think that's out of any international distributor's control.
For sure. No, absolutely. Mark, we're coming up on an hour. This is a little bit of a marathon pod, but we've got one more topic I wanted to get your thoughts on. We had some news that came out, just getting away from the broadcast stuff. I want to talk about our friend Xavi Simons. So it was reported that, he doesn't want to return to PSG from loan. Then the Euros started, and he says he's going to make his decision afterwards and trust the process, he put on his social media. So it's been a week since the Netherlands were knocked out, and we still don't have a decision yet. It was reported earlier this week that he was going to have a conversation with Luis Enrique. And then this morning on Sunday, we had Fabrizio Romano putting out there that PSG and Xavi Simons is 99% over. So we got 1% chance, Mark. So whatever that means. But we know that PSV Eindhoven will receive a chunk of the transfer fee if Simons leaves this summer. So a loan and then a transfer next summer seems most likely. But if you ran PSG, Mark, what the hell would you do with Xavi Simons?
I would make him show up to camp. I would. You have to look. Unless we get the deal we want, whether it be, Bayern on loan and then give us $100 million next year, I think PSG have to just be willing to say, hey, you're on the team. You're under contract. Show up.
2027, he's under contract.
If someone wants to come in and give us an offer that makes sense for us financially, for the talent that you are, we'll honor your request. We're not going to, we're not going to deny you if the offer is fair. We're not going to deny you the opportunity to go to wherever you want to go or wherever it'll have you. But what we're not going to do is just get rid of you because you say you want to be gone and take an offer that isn't the maximum offer that we can get. So I tell them, like, hey, until we get an offer we deem fit, show up to camp.
We don't know what's in his contract, but what we've been led to believe is that he can basically control his future, whether it's a loan or a transfer or what team he gets to pick. It does seem like he has a level of control that's almost unprecedented, at least is in regards to PSG. But what I don't think PSG would have ever agreed to with Xavi Simons would have been, hey, you can choose what team you want to go to. The terms we have to agree to, basically anything. You 100% control your future. That I just don't believe PSG would ever agree to.
There's no way that if PSG, I can't imagine they signed anything that stupid. So to me, it's like, yes, he has to show up to camp. He has to show up if he's told to show up. And my assumption is that as long as PSG is acting in good faith to give him a deal, I think that'll happen.
Now, on the flip side, people will say, why do you want a player who doesn't want to be there at the club? Well, this is PSG.
Well, no, I don't want players that don't want to be here, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to just let the guy leave for nothing because he doesn't want to be here.
Yes, there's a nuance to it. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, there's a nuance to it. He signed the contract, show up to camp. And if Bayern want to come in with an offer, if Leipzig want to come in with an offer, that works. Here's my point. I think PSG need the obligation to buy thing. Like, you can loan him out.
Yeah.
But I don't think you want to just do a regular loan. I think at this point it's like loan with an obligation to buy.
If he gets injured.
Because I don't want this to carry over to next year.
Right.
Let's say he has a rough year next year, then all of a sudden he wants to leave again and you can't get the same value for him. So get the value for him now. Loan with an option to buy. I want to clean this up. Either he's part of the team and he's on the team, or it seems more likely that he doesn't want to be on the team. So fine, we'll loan you out, and then the year after we'll give you an option. And they'll have to.
If he wants to go to Bayern,
that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is, yeah, I just want to deal with this now and not have to have it carry on into further years. But like again, not to keep hammering this home, but it's like I need to see this end one way or the other. Either you're playing for us next year or you're gone. We're not doing another loan and then him coming back and then we're doing all this crap. No, I want to get this done now.
Well, so he's 99% gone.
I want to be able to spend the money on, to know that we have that money in the bank so that we could spend it next year when we need to spend it.
That's how it is. We'll keep an eye on that one. 99% gone, Xavi Simons from PSG, but
I think we had some. If we want to rapid fire, I think we did have some questions.
Let's get into it.
It'll cover most of the transfer stuff
for sure. Yeah, let's get at. I snagged a few. Thanks for everyone who sent in questions. Hopefully, if we didn't get to your question, hopefully we answered it at some point in this podcast. But let's do it rapid fire here. So this one comes from @Edison_Palumbi. He asks, which one of our striker signings from the last season are you more confident in going into next season? So that would be Gonzalo Ramos, Randall Colomwani. Who do you have more confidence in?
I would say Gonzalo Ramos, because I think he fits better what they need. Like, PSG are going to be, at the moment you have two elite wing players, and you need someone that can score in the box with those wingers. You need someone that can pull defenders and allow those guys to be one-on-one on the outside. And right now, I think Gonzalo Ramos is the better of those players. He'll also play defense. He'll also win balls in the middle of the field. I think he started to show what he could do towards the end of last year, and it was really a shame that he didn't get to play in the European Championships because Ronaldo had to, take up all the oxygen in the room, even though he's 39 and playing in Saudi Arabia, which again was completely insane that he got all that time when he literally couldn't do anything. But, I think Gonzalo Ramos is clearly I like Randall Colomwani, but I think for what PSG are attempting to do, I think Gonzalo Ramos is the better option.
Let me unmute my mic there. I'm with you. So just look at the last season. Gonzalo Ramos, he had 11 goals in Ligue 1 in 29 appearances. And we know with Colomwani, I'm just pulling up his stats here. He had.
But also, I want to make that. Sorry, I'm cutting you off a lot.
No, that's fine.
Make that point. That's not 29 starts.
No, that's coming in
appearances.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure, Carl Oscar probably, I think, had this on his Twitter at some point. Mm-hmm. The amount of goals per minute. I'm sorry, the amount of goals started per 60 or whatever, per 90.
Yeah.
Were pretty high for Gonzalo Ramos for somebody that really wasn't starting very much at all.
I think his goal scoring rate was one of the best, when you consider the amount of time he was playing. It's one of the best in Europe. So I think, both of us are in agreement. It's definitely, we have more confidence in Gonzalo Ramos. You look at Colomwani, who knows the league. He played at Nantes, but last season, only 6 goals, 26 appearances. That's not going to get it done. Plus, you look at that transfer fee, and the transfer fee is what it is, but you have to take that into consideration. So and there's been rumors, if one of those players did need to be moved on, it probably would be Colomwani. I feel a lot better with Gonzalo Ramos. So thanks.
I wouldn't move Colomwani anyway.
No,
I want to see what he can do. Give him another year and maybe move him 2025.
Yeah.
But.
So at Osef_O ask, what's your take on available wingers in the club? What wing needs competition? So you've got Barcola on the left. You're going to have Dembele on the right. How do you feel about those two? Which one needs more competition? I guess you could throw Asensio as a potential, backup. Colomwani can play on the wing.
Yeah, he can play on, but he's like Kang-In, where it's like, they're not. They can play on the wing, but they're not really. They're not really wing players in the sense like they're not going to drive play down the end like that.
Right.
Like they're like Asensio will get minutes because he can play false 9 and he's a veteran and reliable and a guy you can bring off the bench who can score from free kicks and is good outside the box and he's like a perfect like veteran bench player. So I think he'll have his minutes. I think Kang-In is the interesting one because I've never been totally sold on Kang-In as a player. I think he can do some cool things once in a while, but I just don't know as a sort of a total footballer that he plays the defense you need him to play. I don't think he's, physical enough in this league, but we'll see what he has. I would say if Dembele gets hurt, I think Randall Colomwani becomes your right wing player. I think it's far more important to get someone who can play on the left wing if Barcola gets hurt. Because now you don't have Mbappe, who is basically a left winger striker player. Take him out. Now it's Barcola, really an only Barcola. And it's really important to have a guy with Nuno Mendes on that left side where you can sort of link up and have a chemistry going. So I would say really you need to get a left wing, which means it's Doué. What's the guy from Leeds.
Somerville.
Somerville.
Yeah.
It depends on whether you think you need an actual sort of Desiree Doué kind of player who you'd think would sort of compete with Barcola for minutes.
Well, and we had Jonathan Johnson on, and he said
sorry.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say he said Doué is more of a creative midfielder than a winger, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, I think he could play on the wing, but I think Jonathan Johnson was saying he's more. If you play him more in the midfield, you get more out of him.
Yeah, but then okay, so now your midfield is. Now, but again, he's a guy that has to play. I think if you bring him in, I think he's a guy that has to play. So he's playing over Fabian. Is he playing over Warren Zaire-Emery? I don't think so.
I think he could play probably over Fabian. I think it'd be a good competition. I think best midfielder wins.
But
I was just going to say with Dembele.
Are we saying Vitinha and Zaire-Emery, I think, are pretty much locked in at this point, I would assume.
I would say so. Yeah. I would say so, yeah.
So, it's not that I'm not against signing him. It's just, I think if you're going to, I think left wing is a position you really do need a backup.
Yeah.
Or a guy that can, because I really do want to give Barcola the majority of the minutes at left wing. So that's why I kind of like Somerville as a potential, because it's like he's not going to start. He doesn't have to start.
Mm-hmm.
And you could bring him in for 20 minutes and it looks like the kid can have an impact. He can shoot from the outside. Good dribbler. But I know we're all about big, huge signings and stuff, but like Doué could make sense. But
yeah,
if he's not really a winger, then, also, does Desiree Doué take away Kang-In Lee's minutes? It's great to start. It's just trying to figure out how the rotations will work. I'm not totally against that either, because again, I'm not the biggest Kang-In Lee fan. If he's taking Kang-In Lee's minutes, I kind of don't mind that.
Yeah, they probably would be competing for the same minutes. My biggest worry is just with Ousmane Dembele. I think he didn't get injured last season, and just throughout his career, it's never really happened. So
yeah, but I do think Colomwani can step in and be okay.
He could step in there and be okay. I just wouldn't want to sign any player that's going to stunt the growth of Barcola, because I think he's a special player. That's why I do like Somerville. He's not going to come in here and demand starting minutes like maybe Xavi Simons or somebody else would. I think coming from the championship, he was the player of the year there. Robin Berner, who we've had on before, he's really high on him. So I think if we could bring in a Somerville and have him behind Barcola, we'd be set on the left. You've got Dembele and Colomwani on the right. Up the middle, you would have Gonzalo Ramos. But there's been a lot of reports about Julian Alvarez from Manchester City, and at Zay4337 said, what would be our attackers if Alvarez comes to PSG? Do you think he would be the unquestioned starter at striker? So would it be, I guess you would go Alvarez, Dembele, Barcola. That would be the three, right? Do you think anything different?
And that would be the if Julian Alvarez is leaving Manchester City because he wants more minutes, which I guess, if you're playing behind Erling Haaland, you're not going to get a whole lot of minutes.
Exactly.
If he's going to go to PSG to play behind Gonzalo Ramos, I don't necessarily think that's...
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah, that's not...
And that's why people are saying maybe Ramos would go as well as Colomwani potentially to open up some room. It all depends on who Luis Campos and Luis Enrique, who they think is the best fit. They know more than I do.
I just tend to have my thought on all this. I think you're going to have a much quieter window than last year's. And I think you're going to need to let this team sort of figure it out for a year, because you don't want to completely screw up the chemistry that you're trying to build. You want to make signings. You want to make the team better, but you also don't want to just add, 4 to 5 great players that, are going to take the spots of your other great players. And then it's like, okay, do you get a rhythm? Or how many of those guys are going to get unhappy? How many it's, you're only playing 34 League One games. You don't have a tertiary league cup anymore. So it's like, you really have 3 competitions.
RIP Coupe de la Liga.
Yeah. you have 3 competitions you're playing in, as opposed to 4. So it's like 7 or 8 less games than the English teams play. So it's, it's about, getting a team that can gel together while also, keeping the team competitive and having as many good players on it as you can, where you don't sort of tip over
and get a lot of unrest in the dressing room. And this is the last question we'll get to. So at No Chill, Mike Will said, do you think Seni Mayulu will be playing, will get playing time this year, or will he go out on loan? And then Sheraton Door coming back from loan, or will he?
Remember him?
Yeah, or he'll do another spell in Portugal. I think,
that's another guy. It's like Seni Mayulu is pretty good.
Pretty good.
Sheraton Door, like we keep forgetting half these people that are on this, it's a very large roster that PSG have assembled here.
Yeah.
Which is why I want to try to actually maybe give it time to because are you just going to jump right over Seni Mayulu? You're going to sign Desiree Doué and then Seni Mayulo is pretty much not going to be necessary anymore.
And I don't think these loan deals, if you look at, we had a, Zaka over on our Discord. He did a kind of a great overlook of everyone that was out on loan last season. And really only Xavi Simons, maybe one other player, got significant playing time. Sheraton Door did not play that much for, where did he go? Was it Braga, I think? Braga over in Portugal. Did not get a lot of playing time. So, I think if you send out Seni Mayulu, does he get playing time? Does he really develop? Would he be better playing, just training sessions with, Vitinha, seeing Vitinha every day at training? Would that be better than sending him out to a random Portuguese club? Probably.
Remember, a bunch of years back, I think it was Antero Henrique who, in a fit of genius, got rid of their reserve team, which has screwed them over the last few years, to be honest. There's no reason PSG shouldn't have a reserves team, of guys playing in the 4th division or something. I don't understand that move. Never made any sense to me. But
what was it? Chelsea just signed a player. I think he's an American. Chelsea signed him, and then they have some agreement with Strasbourg. I could be totally getting this wrong, but it feels like it happened, and they immediately just sent him to Strasbourg to play for a season and develop there, because they're all who's that club for PSG? Who can we just get? Who can we send Mayulu to, and he's actually going to play?
Yeah.
We should probably
I
look
just
into
assumed that Braga was one of those kinds of clubs that PSG did business with because of the Portugal connection, but I was maybe Indur was just not very good, and he just didn't have a good season, and they didn't want to play him very much. Because you can't, once you send a guy out on loan, you can't force the other team to play him.
That's fair, yeah. I'm trying to find that. I'm trying to find who that player was. Anyway, Caleb Wiley, I think, is what it was. Yeah. He plays for Atlanta United. Chelsea signed him $11 million deal, and then will be loaned to Strasbourg.
To answer the question, I think with a lot of the international guys out, on their vacations, the first sort of 3, I'm sure at some point in late July they're going to start playing some preseason games with whoever's there. So, we'll see some of Seni Mayulo. We'll see Sheraton Door. I don't think PSG need to be in a rush to get these guys out the door. Let's see what they have.
Absolutely.
Let's see what they got.
See what they've got. So thank you, everyone who sent in a question. Really appreciate that. We don't do it too often, but I like that you guys were able to respond and add some really, really good questions. So thank you. It made us think there for a second. All right, Mark, always fantastic having you on, getting your insights. We'll have you on again real soon. And thank you to everyone out there listening. The season, as I mentioned, is about a month away. Expect quite a few changes, hopefully. So we'll keep you updated. Hopefully you can keep on listening. And once again, make sure you subscribe to PSG Talk Extra Time over on Substack for more PSG Talk. Until next time.
Au revoir for now.